Almost finished with this oil burner. Still deciding a few of the things and working out a few kinks. This is the oil tank, it's just 2.5 gallon jug with a plug in the top of the lid, a valve, and some copper pipe to drip right into here. And this is an overflow reservoir. The oil drips in from that tank up there into here. And the copper line at the bottom then goes down, runs along an air supply, then goes through the air supply to the burner. That way, while this is in the fire, it's constantly keeping it cool. And from tests, that actually seems to be working well. Back to the drip cam. The overflow, if something happens, like let's say this hose stops burning for whatever or flowing for whatever reason, it now has a place for the excess oil to go, so it doesn't just pour it all over the ground. So I might be doing something in the shop and turn around and this is plugged, at least, you know, the oil's going somewhere into another canister and not flooding the floor everywhere. Inside, the air supply comes in through the side with the oil supply. The oil supply exits at a lower place than when it started in. So again, the oil comes out of there. It's the inside of the burner and the holes that supply air. I tried putting holes up a little higher, right there centered, but those holes were doing nothing. Right now the issue I've got is this is 1/4 inch copper line. It does not supply enough oil for this. So I get really a small little flame. And the other thing I'm still having issues with is airflow. I'm going to have to pressurize this air somehow and have it come out these little holes here so it jets out with turbulence and causes a good mix with that oil vapor to get a good clean burn. Because when I did that, I began to get some blue to the flame again, and the orange part of the flame would turn a very bright yellow instead of just being a dull orange. How I'm thinking I can accomplish this is I had an old Smog pump laying around and an old electric motor. Smog pump, unfortunately, has this big pulley here, so I had to test it out with a drill, and attached a pulley to a drill and kind of did a near 1-to-1 here, and it might supply enough air here. I noticed it had a lot of pressure. This is mid. I blocked off that pressure flow to this. It was actually enough to bog down the drill, so I'm hoping that means it'll supply pressure through those little holes to offer a very turbulent airflow that causes a good mix and hopefully cleans it up, because I was getting still a touch of white smoke, and I noticed when I add extra airflow I could get that to vanish. To me, that's just wasted energy and it's an unclean burn. I'm going for no smoke. So I'm going to switch the Smog pump to this pulley. We're going to go ahead and take this piece of cold roll I cut off, machine it down so I can fit that shaft to that. And then I've got a bunch of other pulleys in the shop that I can swap between these two until I get a airflow that's going to provide me with a good burn. And I'm also going to upgrade this copper line to at least 3/8, maybe bigger. Alright, I got the little piece indicated to make that little adapter. It's not very good, but the source I'm working with is just some raw stock. It's cold roll. I'm going to be getting my dimensions out of it, so that'll be close enough not to create an excess amount of vibration on the piece. That's in. Let it cool down. It's now room temp. Go ahead and grab a pulley and see if she fits. Perfect. Not too snug. I can slide it off, but not real wiggly either. So actually I can't even feel any slop. And I have to work it on, so perfect. That's exactly the fitment I was going for with this. Probably see the pattern here because a little bit of chatter on there, but that's okay. This is a smart pump that's going on. That little adapter. Originally just had the pulley belted up right there. See, it's got a little centering peg. There goes in. Blows out this way if you spin it the right direction. And hopefully this got enough life left to fan the oil in my oil burner. Especially with some pressure, because these got to overcome exhaust gas pressures. So they usually put out some sort of pressure. I know back in the day, before they made supercharger kits for motorbikes, a lot of people were taking these off of the old engines and using them for just that, superchargers for small engines. Now you can actually buy a supercharger for that purpose, and they are a lot better. But just kind of interesting how sometimes people get ingenuitive and repurpose something. Bang, see, that just sits right on there. I'll get that bolted on. We'll go ahead and test her out with a couple different size pulleys and see if I can get the flow I want. I'm going to show you guys the airflow of that sucker. Here's what I came up with now. Smogger pump goes on up. As you can see, I've got the upgrade lines, 1/2 inch line now. Just kind of had some daps laying around, made her work. Comes out of that. It's got a choke down piece here, so even if the valve's wide open, it should never flow faster in the copper line below it. But if it does, I got to bypass and drain it. And to get this cleared out after I'm done operating is I can pull this up and out. So now I got a way to get rid of the oil supply if I want. See, it's not secured in there. This is playing loud. That's even a scrap belt on this. Most all pieces you see here are just scrap pieces that I've gotten for free over the years. Including that motor that actually came out of a furnace that was being junked. And I said, hey, I'll take the motor off of that if you don't mind. But it's kind of a noisy little sucker. There's that piece I machined for it. That's all it was, just to convert to this pulley. And I'll wind this pulley out if I need a little more speed, and if it still isn't fast enough, I got other pulleys laying around to crank it up a little bit. Not a fan of doing a refire after they're warm, because sometimes you can get an auto ignition going on. So we're going to pour a little in there. Listen if it sizzles. It's not really sizzling too heavy. You can see some of the vapor. That's why I don't like that. Alright. As you see, the vapor is what burns of this. I didn't dump very much in there just because I knew it would take off pretty quick. Then we'll go ahead and add our air back. this down a little bit. What's nice here is we can actually look down there and see if our flow rate. It's not a heck of a lot. We're going to let this catch up. So that's good. And I was having a smoke break and he had a wonderful idea. Just to show you that it's not flowing more than the chimney could do. See, it's sucking me right in. And that's what I'm after. No smoke, just like that. Excellent. It's actually working quite well with the 1/2-inch copper pipe. And it gets hot enough to actually burn the carbon. See how it's getting the carbon white. And notice some dark black out here. What had happened is my dad thought he could just light the oil. And so he turned it on full bore. And the bowl filled with a little bit of oil. And then he noticed that the flame went out, so he thought, well, I'll just start it with a rosebud. Because, he was just sticking paper towels in there, lighting it, and thinking that it would get the oil burn, which it didn't. So he had to take the rosebud off of the cutting oxyacetylene torch to get her going. And by the time he got going, he had quite a bit of oil built up in this before it got hot enough to start burning the vapor of the oil. Because that's what these oil burns do here. Is they burn the vapor of the oil. You're not burning the actual oil itself, so you need that little bit of heat, and so that's why I either put diesel, number 1 or number 2, or jet fuel, or a little bit of kerosene in there, so it gets nice and warm before I start trickling a little bit of oil in there. And then as the heat builds, I can keep putting more and more oil in there because the vapor, vaporizing action, the oil starts to keep up with the heat output of the oil itself. So you're kind of doing that balancing act, and he didn't know that when he went to run it. He just woke up real early one day and thought, heck, that's neat. It really got the shop warm. And I have been enjoying it because it does get it really warm. But once he did get going, it foamed up and a bunch of oil boiled out. But that's also kind of why I liked doing it this way, because if it did do that, it would just sit in the fireplace and go nowhere. And that's exactly what it did. This out here was actually something else. It wasn't related to that, even though it looks like it was. That was actually me taking it out and dumping little bits of oil in there during testing phases. But this thing gets so hot that the chimney exit here at the 90 will get red hot, so I have to set up an additional fan here to this to cool this down. So what I might have to do is plumb in another little air nozzle here to blow a lot more air on this. So I had to add just like a little box fan that kept it golden. And this line, after 2 days of operation, 8 hours a day, this would stay cool to the touch, not cold. So that was neat. The copper line stayed cold because of the oil going through it and the air. Has a little bit of P-trap here, comes up, goes into my overflow, and I'm glad I decided with this design, because if you look down here, I had some oil actually spill up out of that. And what had happened is The oil sources I go through tend to be really thick oil and sometimes get thicker, sludgier deposits in it. And what had happened is some of that sludge got into this, and it doesn't drain as fast. And once it clears the jug, it, needless to say, starts bumping a little too fast. My overflow tube was keeping up, it filled up, but the reason it didn't keep up totally is this line wasn't straight, so I had to put a bolt in it and was hoping that I'd watch it closely and get this line to straighten out. As you can see, it just hangs there. So I'm glad I went with that design so I can run that sludgy or heavy oil, which, you know, is hard to filter in the centrifuge. So that should keep up with any problems. If not, what I'm going to do is take that piece off and put a big T and have a big line going into a jug. As you see my oil supply, all I got to do is tilt it on its side. Well, oil streak down the side of it is because I had just filled it and just put it up there for this video. I didn't wipe it down. Of course, while I'm videotaping, I noticed this before cleaning it up. And I just wired that outlet here so I could have an on-off switch just to the fans and still have my other outlet for my power tools if I need it. I just need to find a cover for it. You guys are about to see what I'm going to see. I haven't looked at this yet. This is the first time clean after 2 solid days of running. And I had tried to make this easy to take apart, but I know the last time I had taken this apart to change copper lines to like the bigger size, it wasn't as easy as I had foreseen when I did it. But what I'd hoped to do is have it set where I could kind of turn it, just get everything out of there. And it could be just practice, but at least that's how I had hoped to design it. It just never seemed to pan out that way. Wow, there's substantial buildup in there. That might be switched to every day. But, yeah, wow. So, burner looks alright. We'll get close to that line, see if it's plugged. But this, let's see where that burner sat in there. And, yeah, just coke. Whatever that is. Let me angle that toward the light. Like, look at that. This is hard stuff, too. Look at that. Wow. That's going to be like hammer and chisel stuff there. Look at that. The oil on the bottom. This, I think that's what that is coke. I know in the refining process from heating up the oils, they get a hard residue like this that really takes a lot of heat to burn. But I'm also getting hot enough to actually burn some of the coke in on the side, so that's actually really neat. And I don't know if there's anything I can do to prevent that, or if that's just going to be what I have to deal with this. And if it is, I'm going to try to make this a little easier to take apart.
Nope.
I'm going to go ahead and chip this out a little bit with a hammer and pile it up, and we'll show you guys how much I got here. This stuff is actually a lot harder than I thought it was. I thought I could just chip it out with the basic little screwdriver here. That's just to fill up, so I thought, it'll come right out. But this stuff, in some spots, is ½ inch thick. It's just nuts. You can see where the surface kind of burned. So it leads me to believe it's some form of carbon. And I'm sure other things are mixed in, but for the most part it's probably carbon. Alright, let's take a look here. What I'm afraid that's going to happen here is this line's going to clog up, but I'm going to inspect it real quick and see what's going on here. Well, that's a good sign. Not plugging up at all. I'm getting buildup on the outside though, but it's not sticking too hard. See a little residual oil there. Now, how bad is it getting on this burner here? It's getting on there, but it's not really on there hard. As you can see, I can just scrape it off real quick. And some of those holes had some raised stuff to them anyway. But the side where the oil is, where it hits the hot and splatters, you can see, that's where it gets real heavy. See, I tried to design it where everything can move because that compression fan I got over there should allow that, but let's see, just nothing clogged on it, so that's great. Doesn't look like I got a lot of corrosion yet. I assumed this would be a sacrificial piece, so the way I built it was to be something I could change out pretty quick. So this piece was meant to be easy to turn, spin. You can see where it was sitting in the carbon. And look at that. It just does not come off. Hammer and chisel the whole way. Wow. I think what I'm going to do is leave that on there just out of curiosity's sake, because this is kind of suspended anyway. And we'll leave a lot of this built up here since it scrapes off so easy, because it's not plugging any of the holes. None of the holes are getting even remotely plugged. That's why I was checking them a little bit and scraping just to see. Even these real teeny ones I made, see, even those little teeny holes I did, they're not plugging up either. And that's what I wanted to see. I'm talking about that one right there. And I had put some afterburner ones a little higher up on this burner. And you can still see them up there too. The reason I did that is if I get a bad burn, let's say I'm switching to a different oil, because I notice like if I switch to hydraulic oil, it flows a lot faster through this, so I need to turn the valve down. But if I'm just running some heavily cooked 1540 diesel motor oil, not a problem. So yeah, it's kind of a shocker. You guys got to see things for the first time just like I did with that. That's something I actually never seen. I mean, I've always been told you're going to have to clean these oil burners like that. You're going to have to scrape them out, get a lot of the junk off them, but I didn't realize that they built up that much. So hope you guys enjoyed taking the trip with me on discovering this as well. Thanks for watching.